Today's edition of Mac Voices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of PDF Pen for Mac, PDF Pen Pro for Mac, PDF Pen for iPhone and iPad, PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPhone and iPad, Text Expander for Mac, Text Expander for iPhone and iPad, and Disk Label. Find out more about all their great products at smilesoftware.com. And by ProXPN, the virtual private network service. Protect your internet by securing your connection and get up to 50% off by visiting proxpn.com and using the offer code VOICES. Welcome to the MacJury on MacVoices. This is the Talk of the Mac community. I'm Chuck Joyner. Folks, this is the first time that the MacJury has been convened in 2016. I'm kind of excited to have this group here to talk about what Apple could do better. There have been a lot of discussion about some of the things that maybe Apple is not doing as well as they could or should be. We're going to find out just what our panelists think. So let's find out who we are going to hear from. Going from left to right on my screen, Mr. Chuck Tournous. Chuck, great to have you back.
Thanks, Chuck. I appreciate you having me back. For those who don't know me, I'm Chuck Tournous. I do most of my writing these days for the Mac Observer, although I still pen the occasional piece. Can you say pen digitally? I guess so. For the Mac Observer at macobserver.com. And you can find me at Twitter at Chuck Tournous, if you can spell it.
Great. You're not doing much of your outdoor activities right now, I wouldn't think, Chuck.
You know, I had set aside this weekend for winter camping with my sons because they were around, and then when we saw the temperatures, we're going to go into wind chills of 20 to 30 below zero. We said, maybe we'll skip this weekend.
Why would you go winter camping?
Because camping in the winter is the best except for all the other three seasons.
Okay. I'm not going to ask anymore.
So it's sort of like the camp trip at the time is the best.
That's right. It's still fun. Hey, there are no bugs for one thing. The sites are beautiful in the winter, especially if there's snow out there. It challenges you. It's bracing, and as long as you're prepared for it, you can stay warm. You have to layer up, keep dry, But it's still a blast, especially out here in New Jersey.
Good. Send us pictures. I'll
look at them, but not invitations.
I'll look at them by the fire. Yeah.
Okay. Fine.
Also with us, Mr. Mark Fuccio. Mark, it's great to have you back as always.
Hi, Chuck. It's good to be here. I think this will be a new and interesting panel, and look forward to it. And like Chuck, I've enjoyed winter camping in Yosemite many years ago. With a young lady who later went on to become my wife. So I think she knows from that incident that I have a completely unique, different view of the world.
Should we ask you to follow up on that or just let it go?
Oh, she's from Brazil, so she thought the idea of going winter camping was completely crazy. But she's open to adventure. Good.
Well, she married you, so. Sorry, you set me up. I couldn't not take that. And Mr. Peter Cohen. Peter, it's great to see you.
Hey there. I'm Peter, and I do not camp.
I'm kind of with you there, Peter. It's not one of my things either.
Sorry, Chuck.
What are you up to, Peter? What's going on with you?
I am now a technology writer at Backblaze, backblaze.com. Backblaze is a leading provider of online backup services to personal and business, and they recently launched a really cool service aimed at developers as well, who are looking for cloud services. So lots of cool stuff going on over there. I, of course, formerly worked at imore.com and Macworld. I've written about the Mac for many years. You can find me online at Flarg and peter-cohen.com.
Great. It's great to have you. Thanks so much for being here, and congratulations on the new gig.
Thank you very much for having me, Chuck. I'm very delighted to be here on the first MacJury of 2016. How exciting.
Yeah. Well, I hope so. I hope so. Mark, I'm going to let you start this out because you were the one that sort of suggested this topic. I'm not sure if it was out of frustration with something or just observation, but the idea that Apple is not maybe keeping its eye on a couple balls the way it should be. So why did you float that idea?
Well, it sounds like maybe my idea was like a snowball going downhill, and it grew and changed directions a little bit. I think I had sent you a message that this is after the Apple earnings report and the knee-jerk reaction and sell off the stock. That what Apple needs to do better is communicate its vision to Wall Street, because it's not. Wall Street hates uncertainty, and if they don't know anything, and the easiest thing is to sell and come back later. So that was the idea behind what I had in mind, and we can talk about that a little bit later in the podcast. But it sounds like it's grown as you've recruited other members for the jury. So back to you.
Okay, well, I want to stay with that for just a second, because I sometimes wonder. I know it's a bit of a reality in today's world, but should Apple or any other company really be focusing that much on Wall Street, or should they be sticking to developing great products, selling great products, and letting Wall Street and the analysts take care of themselves?
That's a very nuanced question, and it depends on what your perspective is. In terms of trying to manage the company to meet Wall Street expectations, they shouldn't do that, because they're a bunch of morons, and there's so many people with so many different time horizons that all it is just cacophony and noise. As an investor, you really need to, and this is easy to say but hard to do. You really have to think through what your objectives are, and more importantly, what your time horizon is, because the markets, there's that, I think, is it that Warren Buffett or Phil Graham saying that in the short term it's a popularity contest, in the long term it's a weighing machine. So the markets tend to be fair, but because there's so much money to be made just by erratic jerking around of share prices, you get all sorts of stuff that is designed to make short-term movements, and people can get awfully confused thinking that applies to the long term. So I think really what they need to do is focus on building products and growing their business, because ultimately Wall Street will respect and give a decent return for that. Sort of the thing that was dismaying to me is, I think Tim Cook is starting to sound a little bit like Johnny One Note by saying, well, we just tried to make the best products we can. And that's sort of like saying the key to Wall Street is buy low and sell high. It's technically true, but it's just a little too boiled down and a little condensed wisdom. I think he needs to do more. Some of the things he did, I think it was 2 years ago at a shareholders meeting, somebody was asking him about why he's wasting money on green initiatives and things. And one of the things a board can proactively decide is what sort of investors they want. And I think in that case, Tim Cook said that if you think that's a waste, then you probably are better off not owning the stock and investing in something else. Warren Buffett writes a lot in his annual reports of making sure that there's no splits in Berkshire Hathaway, and that's why the price is several $100,000. That he wanted high price to be useful for selecting the right type of investor, i.e., somebody would be impatient, who would be patient, and stick with the business as it grows over time. And I think Apple and Tim Cook would do well and copy Warren, and maybe they should have a short little owner's manual that they put in their shareholder filings that they send out, because I think they're doing a great job in running their business. Obviously there's some areas they could polish and improve, as is true of every company. But I think the fact that they're really not communicating to the Wall Street in a way like saying, we've been lucky this past decade. We've had 3 or 4 technology hits. Our business has grown dramatically. Many of you may have become accustomed to it. This is not something that happens on demand. Innovation takes time, and it requires confluence of all sorts of factors, many of which we, Apple, can't control. But as our shareholder owners, rest confident that we are focusing and looking at next set of large growth markets and building the best products we can. And we're working and waiting for the timing of events to come together. And till then, we have a large business that's very profitable and throwing off insane amounts of cash. So please sit back and enjoy the ride.
Wow, there's a lot to think about there. Chuck, any reaction to Mark's theories or the topic at hand?
Yeah, my initial reaction is that if I ever hear Tim Cook speak the words "rest assured" as shareholders, that I'll give up all hope for the company, because one of the things that I like a lot about Apple is that they've never chased shareholders. They've never done things for shareholder value. They've done things for customer value, and let the stock market, decide on its own whether they like that or not. I also don't think Apple has really been focused on growing the business in that kind of fashion. I think they do want to make cool products. I think that is part of their DNA. So when Tim Cook repeats that, I'm happy about it. I don't think it's trite. I think it's been Apple's story for as long as they've been around, and that hasn't always worked, and right now it is. My issues with Apple, my concerns about Apple have nothing to do with whether or not they're trying to improve shareholder value. It's whether or not I think they're spreading themselves too thin. It's whether they may be losing a little bit of focus on what they're bringing to their customers. But it really has nothing to do with their ledger sheet, in my opinion.
Peter, it sounds like we have a little conflict between our respective jurors. Friendly conflict, but not disagreement. Maybe is a better word. Which side of the fence do you fall on?
I've been a Mac user for a very long time. I started using the Mac 30 years ago, and I've seen bad Apple, I've seen good Apple, I've seen everything in between. I think that our expectations of what Apple can do for us are much higher than they have been at any time in the past, and that's led to unreasonable expectations on Wall Street, unreasonable expectations of technology pundits who write about this stuff, unreasonable expectations of customers. Apple set the bar very high for itself, and people, and unfortunately, there's an elevated expectation when it comes to Apple, both on Wall Street and on the consumer side of the fence. So it's damned if you do, damned if you don't. Apple's kind of stuck between a rock and a hard place here.
From the standpoint of trying to address Wall Street's concerns or trying to address customers' concerns?
I don't think that they can address Wall Street's concerns. I think that Wall Street is always going to have a perverse set of values to the rest of the world. Because Wall Street is interested in one thing, and that is making money, and that's it. And I'm not casting a class warfare statement or anything like that. I'm not making any particularly bold statement here. That's exactly why Wall Street exists. It exists by its own rules because it's there to make money. The problem that I have come across in my experience the most with Apple, sort of letting me down in terms of user experiences with iTunes. It's an app that I've used for more than a decade. It's an app that I totally depend on for managing my music. But as Apple has laid more and more services and functionality in iTunes, they've created more of a bloated, unpleasant experience to use it on the Mac. I mean, iTunes doesn't exist on iOS the same way that it exists on the Mac. There's a music app, and there's an iTunes app, and they're separate from one another, and they're separate from the video app, and they're separate from syncing technology. But all that stuff is hammered together into some sort of grotesque stew that we call iTunes on the Mac, and Windows for that matter. And it's a monstrosity. It's a bloated, shambling monstrosity. It's like the Blob, It's a horrifying thing. That is a great example of where I think that Apple has kind of lost the thread, where Apple has taken its eye off the ball for so long, or maybe it's so representative of some systemic issues at Apple that it is not a product that I think keeps with the Apple experience that we expect, which is functionality and simple, elegant design. And as we all know, as Steve Jobs has been quoted in saying, simple is hard. Maybe Craig Federighi should spend less time on his hair and more time coding stuff.
Chuck, you were going to say something, I think, somewhere in there.
No, I was just, nodding in agreement at a lot of this stuff. Yeah, I completely agree about iTunes. Bob Levitas, whom we all know and love, has launched a website called iTunesMustDie.com and has a theme song for it and all that. So yeah, I'm with you there. I think I would sure love for Apple to spend the next year or so polishing up the software rather than worrying about new feature releases. I'm not a big fan of the public beta process either, because that really, I think, exaggerates the perception that Apple's putting out incomplete software, because beta is by definition incomplete software. But I don't think a public beta released to the numbers of users that Apple has that. It can't be a beta, right? You're still releasing it. It's out there for everybody. So you wind up with crap and things that don't work yet, and just let's bring that back in house. And if we need to give developers the betas, but let's not make every Joe and Sally on the street beta testers for us, because I'm pretty sure they're not filing reports and radars and all that kind of stuff. Boy, what else has Apple screwed up lately? Oh, the other thing that it feels like Apple has been doing to me is leaning towards the greedy. I think things like killing off iTunes radio stations, just some of the pricing issues on the Apple Watch stuff and accessories. It just doesn't feel like Apple's for the rest of us anymore. It feels like there are things that, Apple's become this aspirational brand in a lot of respects, and that doesn't feel as true to its original mission to me. But maybe I'm just old and cheap. I don't know.
I don't know if you're old and cheap. I think that they are trying to establish themselves as a particular brand in the wearable market. That they're not a cheap brand. That there are cheap brands, there are cheap options out there. But some of the pricing may be just a little high. I agree with you. But on the other hand, there are plenty of other wearables in that space that are doing exactly the same thing. And if you just remove smartwatches from that category, there's a whole class of watches that are priced ungodly high for something. They perform the same function as something that you can buy for $9.99 at the drugstore, and I mean $9.99. So why are you buying a watch? Well, for me, I bought an Apple Watch for function, not as much for the style. I'd like it to look good. I don't want to look like I have an alarm clock strapped to my wrist, or for that matter, an iPhone. But so I don't know, the iTunes thing, Peter. I'm glad you brought that up, because of course that can take us down. That could be a show in itself about the agreements and disagreements with iTunes. But there does seem to be a certain amount of frustration that goes along with it, even if you look at it from the standpoint of performance. It doesn't seem to perform quite as well as we need it to right now, as our music libraries are getting bigger, our video libraries are getting bigger, and we seem to be trying to turn to iTunes for more things.
Right.
Yeah,
I would agree with that, because I used to use iTunes a lot and keep it open on my iMac. Now, most of the time, I keep it closed. And the new versions, I just feel like a fool, because I can't find things. I always have to go hunting and exploring. And maybe this is sort of a negative feedback loop of, because it's difficult to use, I don't use it, and because I don't use it regularly, I don't develop any muscle memory. But it's just it really has gotten much worse, and I think that it could become an impediment if Apple is to get more serious about doing things with video. That I'm fearsome if they try to put it through iTunes, it's going to be a choking point. It's just going to explode and just not be pretty, even to the point where I think it could really be holding them back. And there's all sorts of rumors and talks and speculation about what Apple might be doing in an over-the-top type of service. So maybe they're maybe they're tossing in the towel and deciding it's hopeless, and let's try to just move on.
How about some from the app standpoint, from the application standpoint? I'm thinking, in fact, we had this discussion just last night at our user group. They kind of tore Pages and Keynote apart and rebuilt them, and they've come back. Some would say they've come back the whole way. Some would say they haven't come back the whole way. Same thing earlier with Final Cut. Same thing earlier than that with iMovie. Mm-hmm. A lot of that stuff seems to have been dictated by the fact that they were trying to make the experience on the iOS devices and the desktop at least similar. Not exactly the same. They seem to be playing. I think they're playing a better game than Windows is. Windows seems to try to squeeze the Windows OS and on everything, depending on the screen size. Apple does a little bit better job of adapting the OS to the screen size, or the applications, I should say, to the screen size. But those were pain points for a lot of people, especially when it came to Final Cut, because that's something that people make their living with. Was that approach a good one?
So you're combining several issues there. So let's leave Final Cut apart for a moment.
Okay.
Because I think part of the reason Apple has seen such rapid growth that overset expectations is the Mac phone, the iPad, are all sort of variations, on a theme. And, as they've tried to homogenize or unify and harmonize the experience between them, if you look back, from benefit of history, it's clear that these are all mobility plays of one sort or another. And, I think maybe the watch is a bridge too far, if anyone remembers that classic World War II movie, because I have one, but, it's just, to me, it's just as bad as iTunes. I mean, there's 3 different ways to interact with it. And it's sort of like, God damn it, pick one interface and make up your mind, because, all the 3, it just gets in the way. And I think some of them just are there for showing, oh, well, we have plenty of nice watch faces, BFD. So I think they're, in that case, I think they're experimenting, or unfortunately they don't have something where either they have somebody like Jobs who has a clear vision of this is the next unwanted pain point in the future, and they threw a lot of stuff out there. I still remember, the Apple exec X of Adobe introducing the watch twice, trying to show every single feature and everything it could do. Way too much information, completely confusing. It should have been, here are the 3 or 4 or maybe as many as 5 cool things that you can't live without, and they didn't do that. And I think I see that sort of degradation going on in a lot of their other product launches. So that's the thing, I think is a concern, is that, I think they're drifting away from, having sort of a clear, sharp laser vision, and they're thinking, Peter was one who said, bad Apple when they have too many competing products. And if you look at their product line right now, my feeling is that there are too many choices. It makes it harder for somebody to buy. So they need to do a little bit of pruning, and I think getting back to making simple set of products that you really do generally solve problems. And better iTunes, better mail, better software quality. I think these are all things that are necessary.
Mark, clarify one thing before I want to go to Peter, but one thing, you said that the Apple Watch has 3 ways of interacting with it. What were you referring to there?
Well, you have this beautiful crown, thingy that John Ivey waxes poetic about. You have this button, which, best I can tell, it brings up, your friends so you can call them or send them a heartbeat. And then you have the touch, Actually, no, there's a 4th. I mean, emotional direction, will interface and trigger the watch to do things too.
Okay. So you were referring to the controls, all
Yes.
the control surfaces. Okay. All right. Peter, I've forgotten. Do you have a watch? An Apple Watch. You have an Apple Watch. Okay. Are Mark's concerns valid from where you sit?
I don't think Mark knows what he's talking about.
Could be true.
That's great. Go for
Bunch
it,
of
Peter.
Babbling damn ignorance. No, I'm just kidding. I think that Mark actually raises some very valid points. I think that Apple's focus has gotten muddy in its products. I think that its overall message, its overall statement of purpose has gotten a lot more complicated in a lot more ways because they're trying to reach a lot more people with a lot more features, and they're trying to cover a lot more ground because their competition is too. And that's created a very confusing tapestry. People have to remember that people who buy iPhones number in the millions, in the tens of millions. And the vast majority of these people are not invested in understanding the technology to the same degree that we do, or the people that are listening to or watching this podcast do. That we are the outliers, in fact, that we are the edge cases. And that for the most part, the people who are using these products find them to be mysterious black boxes that are things that I can make phone calls on, or keep my contacts on, or keep my calendar on, or do all those things. But I don't know much more than that. And when it breaks, I don't know how to fix it, and I don't know what to do. That represents the user experience that millions of people have with their iPhones, with their Samsung Galaxy S6s, with their LG phones, with every other device that they've got in their pocket or in their messenger bag or wherever. People are appliance users. We're clever monkeys, but that doesn't mean that we're all, capable of taking these things apart and putting them back together again. And that puts Apple at a real deficit, I think, because Apple's message and Apple's product focus has gotten so widespread over the past few years that Apple is expecting its customers to make a very deep and abiding investment, financial investment, emotional investment, logistical investment in not just acquiring things, but apps to run on these things and services that make these things do what they want them to do. And Apple certainly is nickel and diming people. I pay $25 a year for iTunes Match, and I still pay $15 a month for a family membership to Apple Music. That's dumb. That's too much. It should be one or the other. You pay a ridiculous amount of money for iCloud storage above and beyond the 5 gigabytes that you use. Apple is parsimonious at best when it comes to its pricing for additional tiers of storage capability, which are pathetically easy to require if you have even one reasonably loaded iOS device, let alone two. If you have an iPad and an iPhone, your 5 gigs is out the freaking window.
Yeah.
So, I think Apple could be doing a hell of a lot better. And this Error 53 baloney that we've been hearing about with the Touch ID sensor replacement, look, I understand why they do it. The secure enclave has to stay secure. It's a good thing. But Error 53, Apple, I'm a Mac user who remembers Error Type 11. I never want to see that crap from you again.
This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by Smile, the makers of PDF Pen, PDF Pen Pro, PDF Pen for iPad and iPhone, PDF Pen Scan Plus for iPhone and iPad, Text Expander Touch, and Disk Label. Find out more about all their great products at smilesoftware.com. I'm betting that you use PDFs in one way or another on a pretty regular basis. At least every week, maybe every day, maybe even multiple times a day. That's why you need PDF Pen from Smile. With PDF Pen, you can do everything to PDFs that you want to do, that you need to do. Mark them up. Securely redact them so that the parts you don't want read can't be read. With PDF Pen Pro, you can take it a step farther. Run your PDFs through optical character recognition so that they become editable text. Export them to Microsoft Word, export them to Excel, export them to PowerPoint. And that's just the beginning. Create and edit fillable PDF forms. Create a document table of contents. Scan material directly to PDF from a scanner. Sign PDFs with your signature. Convert entire websites to PDFs so you can read them offline. The list goes on and on. The fun doesn't stop there though. With PDF Pen for iPhone and iPad, some of the most powerful features of PDF Pen are available on your iPhone or your iPad, so you can work on the go. Want to tap all that power quickly and easily? Michael E. Cohen helps you do it in Take Control style with Take Control of PDF Pen 7. With Michael's help, you'll be a PDF Pen power user in no time. Don't take my word for it though. Download a trial version of PDF Pen from smilesoftware.com and find out just how much you can do with a PDF. That's PDF Pen and PDF Pen Pro for Mac, and PDF Pen for iPhone and iPad for iOS, all from Smile, the makers of world-class software. Thanks to Smile for being the longest-running sponsor of MacVoices. I want to go down the Error 53 road, but I'm not going to for right now. Let's table that for just a second. Chuck, I don't know how you feel. I look at the watch and I respectively disagree with Mark a little bit. This was a brand new product, and it requires it's unfortunately not as intuitive as an iPad. I'm not sure anything is ever going to be as intuitive as an iPad. It just, I don't think it can be.
Well, not when it's 1.5 inches diagonal.
Exactly. So there's going to be a learning curve, and it came to market with a lot of things, and people needed to feel that they needed to have a reason to buy it. And so, we may not all have been as good with learning it or picking it up right away, but I know I've spent a little more time with it, and I have to think about, okay, which one do I want to use to do this or that or the other? And sure, there's some features that don't apply to me, but I'm satisfied with the watch as it is. Can it be better? Absolutely. And we could do a list of things that would make the watch better, but I'm not unhappy with that. How do you see Apple approaching some of those things?
I like my watch too, but I think I learned to know what I should expect of it and what I wanted it to do. It's not going to be a little tiny iPhone on my wrist that will allow me to do all those things that I can do on my iPhone. It's wonderful for notifications. It's wonderful for letting me know things with a little tap, rather than making me pull my phone out to do it. I love, more than I ever expected to, using Apple Maps with my watch, where I can just be driving down. I don't need voice dictation or voice directions. It'll just give me a little tap, and I know when the turn is coming up. It's those subtle things that make me like my Apple Watch a lot. And I do have one. I only have the strap that came with it, and I bought the the fluoroelastomer or whatever, however you say that. But I found, there's a terrific market for third-party Apple Watches on Amazon and some of the other big sources. So I have 6 different straps for my Apple Watch now. So I was a watch guy before, and rather than wear a different watch every time, now I just change the watch face and my strap depending on the occasion, and I have that same kind of feeling. So I like my watch a lot. I wouldn't give it up. I think there is a lot more that can be done with it. Even with Watch OS 2, apps are way, way, way too slow to launch. So I tend not to use apps on my watch. The fitness, the heartbeat monitor, fitness tracker, I think is great. But if I'm going to, pull out an app on my watch, I can take out my phone, launch the app there, do what I want with it, and have it back in my pocket before it's even going to launch on my watch. So, I think it's all about expectations. We'll see what comes out in the next version iteration of the watch. I think there'll be improvements there, but again, it's what we knew what we were getting. Maybe there's no killer app yet for it, but for me, it does what I want it to do, and I'm pleased with it. I think my issue with Apple lately has been its sloppiness. The Error 53, I know you want to get into it later, but that's one example. A new one just came out now that if you set the time and date of your iPhone, you can permanently brick your iPhone. That's just stupid. That's sloppy. And if you want to go to extreme examples, and this got blown way out of proportion, but you look at Tim Cook's photo from the Super Bowl, that blurry photo that he put on Twitter, and now everybody's using it in posters of shot on iPhone, right? But that was a sloppy thing to do. If you're the CEO of a company selling a phone that you're touting how great its camera is. Keep that phone picture, keep it in your pocket, keep it in your private display. You don't need to tweet that out to the world. It just seems to me like Apple's not thinking a lot of things through lately.
By the way, folks, that the date that Chuck just mentioned, I'm not going to repeat it. Do not do that. It will brick your phone. I repeat, do not do it. Don't test it. Don't think, well, maybe it will, maybe it won't. It will. Do not do it. Okay.
Wet paint sign.
Yeah.
Hey, Siri, what date is the epic that bricks the iPhone?
No, stop. Stop. No. That's one thing. We will take no responsibility if you decide to test it. So that said, in fact, I may actually bleep it out, Chuck. I don't know. I'll see, because that scares me a little bit, because somebody will say, "Oh, let's see." And,
then Darwin's law.
Yeah.
You deserve losing your iPhone if you do that.
Yeah.
But I agree with Chuck, actually Chuck the Tournous, about the things I use a watch for. I mean, I think certainly notification, texting is important, as well as also phone calls. Almost missed a phone call last night, but phone was in one room, I was in another, and it came in, and I was able to answer it and get the person to hold, and I hung up and made a return phone call so I could talk properly on the phone. So that, and some of the calendar and other things are useful, but I wish there were a way to get rid of all the junk I don't want. I mean, the way I would make it better is allow people to simplify it. Customize it for what you want, and just get rid of all the rest of the stuff. So it's true. It's only a year old, so let's cut them a little bit of slack. But they really need to recognize that customization is more than the type of band, or metal. It cuts right into the functionality.
I think that's very unfair. I think that the Apple Watch is a very robust device that's already capable of a lot of the customization that you're talking about. Apps that are well designed can be incorporated as part of Glances, for example, and you can create a very easy to access user interface for the content that you need specifically. And I mean, to a certain degree anyway, you can customize what apps are installed on your phone. And I mean, obviously they're core. I mean, on your Apple Watch, obviously they're core apps that you can't deactivate or do anything about. But I've certainly heavily tailored my Apple Watch experience with apps that are meaningful to me, that provide me with the specific functionality that I'm looking for out of my Apple Watch. And I've curtailed notifications and other things, so I'm not constantly getting beeped and booped and poked and prodded and so on.
For instance, I don't get emails, I don't get Twitters. I just, so I agree with you there. I think maybe where we're in agreement is a lot of the optional third-party apps you can customize. There's a lot of the built-in Apple apps that I don't want. They're just a distraction. I'd like to get rid of those too.
Yeah, I mean, and that's fair, but there are a lot of built-in apps on the iPhone that you might see as a distraction that you can't get rid of also, is my point.
Yeah, but you can kind of hide them. You can put them in a folder, and you put that on a...
Well, okay, so there's no nesting on the Apple Watch interface right now. That's a fair criticism. But I'm not sure that making a folder on the Apple Watch to hide all the apps that I want is really the right solution to that problem anyway, right?
That's right. The problem is, people want to suppress the display. On the phone, there's a workaround called a folder. On the watch, there isn't, and on something that small, it really doesn't make sense to.
And how long did it take? How long did it take before we got folders on iOS? I forget.
Yeah, at least a couple versions.
Right. So
we just got them on tvOS.
Came with iOS 4 or something. And,
so I'm not discounting what you're saying, Mark, but I am saying, remember what you said at the outset, which is this is a nascent product. Right. That's only 2 versions into its operating system.
Yeah, but Peter, this ultimately, this is a perfect case study of the dilemma Apple has. Right? Is we all have very high expectations for it. On the other hand, we're all logical and recognize things are young and it takes time to mature. But then we're irrational because we want it now. And that's, I think, the whole dilemma that's facing the company in some way.
Look, a couple of weeks ago, my wife asked me to put some music on upstairs because she was doing something and she wanted to hear some music. So without moving from the sofa, I told my iPhone, and by the way, I didn't have my iPhone either. My iPhone was plugged in and charging someplace. I used my watch to tell my iPhone to start a playlist that played out the Apple TV in our bedroom from my watch. For God's sake, man. I moved from here to here. I did this. Sound came out 20 feet away and up 2 flights of stairs. That's freaking magic. Miracle.
That's magic.
That's what Arthur C. Clarke was talking about when he said that any sufficiently advanced technology is indistinguishable from magic.
Yep.
This is crap that was in comic books when we were kids.
Right.
You know, I feel like Louis C.K. I feel like I'm the only sane person in the room right now. Say everything is awesome and we're all miserable.
Yeah. Peter, they're two sane people because I'm with you. Are there places, again, yeah, it can be improved. Mark, I would suggest a workaround for you. If there are apps that you're not happy with that can't be deleted, you move them off to, one quadrant, and that way you know to stay away from that quadrant. Think Star Trek, if you need to.
Yeah, I call it the dunce cap zone. These are all my dunce caps apps. So just go sit in the corner and think about what you've done.
Right.
Yeah, and third-party apps are a challenge, and what I mean by that is you can set your watch preferences, and when you install a new app on your phone, it does not install automatically on your watch. But then you may not know, probably won't know, that iPhone app has a watch component. So then you turn it on and say, okay, if it's installed on my phone, install it on my watch. And then you get this small cloud of apps that suddenly appear on your phone and you have no idea what they are. It's really difficult. I don't know if we need an installation process.
What the hell are you talking about, Chuck? I mean, you okay. I'll grant you that the process of discovery for apps that have an Apple Watch component is probably not as graceful as it could be. But what is this nonsense about all of a sudden so you got my watch gets flooded with a whole bunch of apps and I don't know, and there's a cloud I have to yell at. Get off my lawn.
No, Peter.
Come on.
No, I tell you, I'm talking about the initial. I mean, when I first got the watch, oh yeah, great. I've connected to my phone and let's see what happens. And all of a sudden I had a lot of apps. I knew some that I wanted. I had no idea what some of the others were. And
I mean, it took me probably about a week to figure out whether or not I wanted this crap on my watch or not. It's a process of discovery, but I mean, it's something that I think each one of us goes through. And I'm not really sure how Apple is expected to curtail or customize that experience in a way that's optimal for each individual user, because the bottom line is the Apple Watch exists as an accessory for the phone. And as an accessory for the phone, for the vast majority of us, we already have invested a huge amount of time in developing a workflow on our phone, using the apps that we want with accesses to the data repositories that we need. And the phone, I mean, the watch is all of a sudden jumping in here midstream and trying to be a good little doobie and do its thing. So you're kind of damned if you do, damned if you don't. The watch can just be a nugget that sits on your wrist and doesn't do anything until you tell it to, or it can kind of jump in with both feet and say, hey, look, I can help you with this stuff too. And then it's up to you to say, all right, you know what? I don't need your help with that. I don't need to get tapped every damn time somebody mentions me on Twitter. I don't need Trello notifications on my watch. It's nice that that's an option. I don't need to know that Mark just completed his steps and was under his calorie count for the day in MyFitnessPal. But if we're connected on MyFitnessPal and I've got the MyFitnessPal app on my watch, that stuff pops up unless I tell the notifications no. It's all there for the user to customize the experience. And I don't buy that it's a messy experience or that it's inelegant, because I think that at the end of the day, that's all dependent on how messy or inelegant your workflow is. Mm-hmm. And maybe if that's the case, you should be sitting in the corner thinking about what you've done wrong, not your apps.
This edition of MacVoices is sponsored by ProXPN, the virtual private network service. Secure your internet with ProXPN. Do you lock your doors at night or when you're away from home? Pull the shades down or draw the drapes so that not everything in your life is on display? Of course you do. So why wouldn't you do that when you're surfing the web when you're away from home? Not to make you paranoid or anything, but identity theft, hacking, and just plain old nosiness is becoming more widespread. That's why you need ProXPN, whether you're across the street at your favorite coffee shop or across the planet on a business trip. Those free Wi-Fi hotspots are really tempting when you're away from home and trying to save on your cellular data. The trouble is that even if you do get a live internet connection, you don't know who's watching what you do and capturing that data for their own uses. Credit card transactions, bank account logins, email logins, all those carefully crafted passwords that you've been using, you are using carefully crafted passwords, right? They're all out there to be seen and appropriated. You want your online communications to be safe and secure. ProXPN's virtual private network service does that for you with a 2048-bit encryption key, a 512-bit encryption tunnel, and all sorts of other geeky stuff that amounts to a super secure connection to whatever you want to connect to. ProXPN takes the whole privacy thing very seriously. So seriously that they don't log your activity, even for a day. They take Bitcoin as payment, so if you're so inclined, you can be completely anonymous, even to them. And with server locations in Los Angeles, Seattle, New York, London, Amsterdam, and Singapore, ProXPN is a truly global operation, giving you the option to appear to outside parties to be coming from wherever you want to. Not sure ProXPN is for you? Set up a 100% free, no credit card required account right now at ProXPN and give it a try. Even better, if you use the code VOICES, you can get one of the premium accounts for up to 50% off. Surf safe and secure no matter where you are on your Mac, iPhone, or iPad with ProXPN at proxpn.com and do it for up to 50% off using the code VOICES. Secure your internet. Thanks to ProXPN for their support of MacVoices. Chuck, I'm with Peter to some degree. You know, I keep wondering, have we hit that critical point where the devices can be so customized for each one of us that we get impatient when they aren't? Even though
Sure we do. We're spoiled. We're spoiled little children by all this technology. We want Apple to figure out what we want before we know it. And they've done that before, so we expect it of them all the time. You talk about being confused by the cloud of apps that suddenly go onto your phone. I tell my phone not to send any watch apps to it at all, right? So it was a nice clean experience in the beginning. Then every once in a while, I flip through the watch app on my phone to see what apps are available for it. And I take a look at them and I'll try a few out here and there, or I'll put some in because I'm traveling and the travel app seemed like a good idea for a while, and then I'll take them off when I'm done. And when I get new apps off the App Store, they always tell you if an Apple Watch app is available for it. So I take a look at the screenshots there and see if I like that. So for me, that's a fun part of the discovery. But yeah, I mean, we always expect Apple to do more than they do, and they've kind of, I don't know, they've set themselves up for that because they've done so well. But it's easier to do that when you were a smaller company and when you had fewer products. And now it's not even just the products that we know about, which has gone way beyond the 2x2 grid that had the pro and consumer versions of an iMac and of a Macintosh and a pro and consumer version of a laptop. You know, I couldn't even spec out the grid of the products that are here now. And those are only the ones that we know about. We don't even know what kind of cars or car devices or, car accessories might be hidden somewhere in the bowels of Cupertino. We don't know about, what the rest of the TV plan, not TV box, but TV content plans are. So Apple's got a whole lot of crap going on right now. And they're releasing, constant updates. So I don't know. I don't know how they keep up with what they're doing now.
So Chuck the Tournous, do you think anyone would have that sort of passionate, discussion about how they feel about, Google or Samsung or Dell or?
Oh, not Dell. But I think that. So as a camping geek, and as all the different kinds of geeks I am, I've found that there are geeks are geeks, and they're passionate about what they do. There are Android geeks, there are Google geeks. There are a lot more people using Apple products out there right now, and they're not fanboys as much as they used to be, right? The percentage of people using Apple products who are the passionate devotees of the company that we were back in the day is a lot smaller now. And I think that's why you hear so many more complaints, because they're not willing to put up with missteps as much as we may have been out there. But yeah, you're gonna find geeks on backpacks. You're gonna find geeks on fountain pens. You know, you get passionate about
everything.
something.
Yeah,
yeah, it's very similar.
Mark, that's a wonderful question. Are the same rules, are the same questions being asked about Google, about the Android smartwatches and the Android phones and the Android tablets? We'll just do the whole run. Maybe it's because I'm a bit more tuned into Apple that I don't seem to hear a lot of that. Occasionally I'll say, boy, I hear somebody say, boy, I really love my Android phone, or boy, this is a real piece of junk. But you don't hear the same anger, outcry, or whatever. Is it because Apple's sitting at the top of the heap in pretty much every way that they're picked on?
I would think. I think Apple attracts a different type of user. I think it's somebody who views their products as a tool, and that's probably why they get so frustrated, because I bought this to do this, and it's now with this new release of this OS or something's broken, and how dare they? And I think that people who buy, say, from Microsoft or things from Google, I think they have different expectation. I don't think they think it's as finely polished and honed a tool, and that they're open-eyed on the fact that there are going to be limitations and that they're going to have to work around things.
Wow. I would have agreed with that a few years ago, but now with the ubiquity of iPads and iPhones, and maybe to a lesser degree Apple Watches, I'm not sure I do. I used to. I think we all used to like.
Which part of what I said do you?
Well, the idea that people select Apple products because they're tools. I think they do, but I'm not sure.
So you think they want to be fashionistas, and these are the things that the cool people have?
No,
is that why they're buying them? Is that what you're saying?
No, not as much. I think I'm saying that they believe that Apple products will work, and they don't. I don't think they think of them as Apple products, like we all do. I think they think of them as a smartwatch or a tablet. And, if they give it a little bit of consideration, they're going to say, well, Peter, what do you have? Chuck, what do you have? Mark, what do you have? Oh, okay, so my friends all have this. That's what I'll get. And, that's a good positive thing, because we all know that, or we all believe, I think, that they're superior products. But I just don't think there's quite as much analysis as maybe there used to be on some of these things.
You could be right. Don't know.
I don't know.
No. But I think there people have different reactions in terms of for whatever reason they buy them. I think that they have different expectations and sort of different emotional response to when things don't go quite as well as they expect.
Yeah.
Well, my perspective on this, from having sold Apple products for the last 2 years, is that people walking in were by and large already familiar with the Apple brand. When they came in the doors, and they had already owned an Apple product, typically an iPhone or an iPad, and were interested in a Mac or an iPad at that point, because they'd already had that positive experience, and they kind of figured that they knew what they were getting, and wanted to take it to the next level. So the halo effect that we've heard about, and that some of us have written about, for years, is very real. It's a very real thing. Apple estimates that half the people who buy a Macintosh are new to the platform. And of those, I'm guessing that the vast majority of them are already familiar with another Apple product when they make the decision to buy a Mac. But what's leading them to buy a Mac typically is their good experience with an iPhone. I had smartphones before and always had problems, or the quality wasn't good, or I didn't like the way the software works. I like all those things about the iPhone, so I'm going to look at a Macintosh, or I'm going to look at an iPad, or I'm going to get an iPhone. An Apple Watch. Interesting sidebar about the Apple Watch. I was chatting today on Twitter with the fellow's name is Neil Seibert. He's the founder of Above Avalon, which you can find at Above Avalon on Twitter, and aboveavalon.com. The interesting thing was that Neil is talking about the experience that he's having when he's talking to people about the Apple Watch, and how the questions are changing a little bit. And I don't know if the rest of you have noticed this, but it's certainly come up for me where when people see an Apple Watch on my wrist, they have questions about it, but their questions have been subtly changing. Initially, and still a lot, the questions are, how do you like it and what do you do with it? People are trying to get their head around it. But one of the points that Neil made to me that I thought was interesting is that things have shifted since the holiday season. And now he's hearing more from people who acknowledge that he's wearing an Apple Watch and say, oh, yeah, I bought my significant other or my mom or my kid one of those for Christmas. They don't have one yet, but they're gifting them to other people who they know can use them. That's kind of an interesting dynamic, don't you think, about how the Apple Watch is starting to insinuate itself into the Apple ecosystem? It's not something people are buying for themselves. It's a luxury item that people are buying for other people.
Or, as you said, it's a perfect accessory for an iPhone, and it has a wide price range, so it's not impossible to give as a gift for Christmas.
That's right. Yeah. It's an expensive bauble for sure, but people had more money last year, I think, than they have, and a lot of people bought them. So, the conversation about the Apple Watch and about Apple's products, just in general, I think, is sort of migrating and changing over time.
Or they just don't want their wives or kids or whatever to miss their phone calls or texts, so now they've got a little alarm on their arm that says that you can't miss them.
There you go.
Guys, this has been interesting. It always is, getting this group together, or any group together on the MacJury, to hear, and I especially like it when we don't agree, because then everybody has to advocate their position. Let's wrap it up, though, by I'm going to ask you to...
Error 53?
No, we're not going to do Error 53.
Okay.
No, I'm going to wrap it up by saying, take 3 or 4 sentences, not a paragraph, but 3 or 4 sentences that you would say to Tim Cook or Johnny Ive or the chairman of the board, whoever you think could affect whatever change you think needs to be done at Apple right now, what their best thing to do. Chuck, I'll let you start.
The one word I would say, I think, is focus, and I think the couple sentence version of that I think would be that you always talked about, for every yes there are 1,000 no's, and I'm get back to that. I think maybe you guys are trying to do too much. I said before, spread yourselves a little too thin. I think I would like to see Apple kind of, get that laser-like focus again, think things through from beginning to end before they start something else. I'll throw out one more example that I think where they got sloppy on that, and it's when they launched the new Apple TV and you couldn't even use the remote app on it. Take the extra couple weeks, finish things. We'll wait for you. We waited for, how long for these things. Let's get it right to start with, and get a little less sloppy. Good
advice. Mark?
Oh, I think what I would tell them is do less, but do it better. I think they seem like they have to have a chip on every square of the roulette table. I think they'd be better off doing fewer things, maybe not having as many releases, but certainly they have to raise their software quality. And I think that's a lot of people just see little annoyances, and you see it on the phone. Sometimes apps don't work, and sometimes I have to reboot it about once a week because it stops responding to my headset. So it's little things like this that there may be tough gremlins because they're intermittent bugs, but if they don't do it, it's corrosive and tarnishing their brand. So do less and do what you do better.
Peter?
Don't listen to the haters, Apple. You be you. My comment to Tim and the rest of the gang would be something along the lines of take iTunes, drive it deep into the desert, kill it, burn the corpse, bury it deep in the ground, and then salt the earth over it. God, I hate iTunes.
How do you really feel?
Yeah.
God, I hate iTunes.
This has been Peter's therapy session.
Yeah, indeed. I understand that the people who are depending on this technology don't understand how to use it and don't trust it either. They're scared of the cloud. They don't understand what the cloud is. They don't care. They don't know. Find ways to make your processes, your systems, your technology easier to use, less threatening, and less hostile to the end user. I mean, come on, Apple. This is why we do business with you.
Those are three pretty darn good sets of advice. There's some overlap, not complete overlap, but I like it. I think if I were going to say something, I think I'd say, go take a weekend off and take a look back at what has happened over the past few years, the successes and the not failures, but the slips, and figure out where the patterns are. And if you see patterns like a lot of us do, then work to fix those slips. Improve the overall pattern of things, which I think that fits in with in some ways with what all of you said too. Because I think the company remains great. I think for all the challenges we're seeing, I still think they put out some of the best products out there, and certainly some of the best products in their class. My 2 cents. Guys, let's go around the room one more time, let people know where they can find you when you're not here serving on the MacJury, and we'll get out of here. This time I'll reverse it. Peter?
You can find me on Twitter at Flarg, Flargh, and on my website at peter-cohen.com.
Great. It's good to have you. Thanks for being here.
Thank you very much for having me.
Mark?
I'm here in Silicon Valley. Anyone out here, you can get in touch with me or just chat and toss ideas around via Twitter. My handle is at Mark, M-A-R-K, Fuccio, F-U-C-C-I-O, all one word.
Good to have you here as always. And last but absolutely not least, Chuck?
Oh, I stop by on Twitter every once in a while, at Chuck Tournous. You can find me there. Again, macworld.com is where I'm doing most of my writing. And if you want to just, see what I'm up to, Random Access has turned into a little bit more of a bloggy kind of thing where I'll throw a thought or two out there once in a while, whether it fits in the technology sphere or not. That's 2 M's. I can't even say it anymore, Chuck. It's been so long. 2 M's, 2 C's, 2 S's, randomaccess.com.
Great. Good to see you, Chuck. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Folks, you can find me on Twitter as Chuck Joyner and at MacVoices.com. That's the best place to see everything that's going on. I really appreciate these guys being here for the MacJury. I hope you appreciate them half as much as I do. Until the next time, thanks for watching. Visit MacVoices.com for links, show notes, to subscribe, to connect with Chuck on Twitter, Google+, YouTube, Facebook, LinkedIn, and the MacVoices blog. Subscribe to our weekly newsletter, the MacVoices Dispatch, to stay up to date on all the latest MacVoices news from our front page or at macvoices.com/newsletter. Do more with your Apple tech by subscribing to the free MacVoices magazine on Flipboard by visiting macvoices.com/magazine. Advertising and sponsorships handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by Cashfly at cashfly.com.